Hello, it's me, Arizu Gaming, and welcome back to another episode of Sandbox Showcase, the series where I talk about problems in Oxygen Not Included and how you can solve them easily and efficiently. So today I wanted to talk about the natural gas geyser. Natural gas is very useful as a source of power when you use it with the natural gas generator, but it can be kind of annoying to set up in the early game for a few different reasons. One is just handling the actual gas itself, because your dupes are often going to get eye irritation walking past it. And natural gas tends to hover between oxygen and carbon dioxide in the base, so it usually gets in the way of plants that are trying to breathe a normal atmosphere. So it's not something that you really want to release out into your base if you can avoid it. And obviously if you're flatulent dupes, you can't avoid it. But what I'm going to talk about today is how I like to handle natural gas geysers in the early game, and how I like to set up a room where I have all of the buildings that tend to produce natural gas in the game, and how I house them in this sort of two-tiered setup, where we have a low-pressure room where the natural gas comes in, and then we have a high-pressure room where it's stored, and then we pump it out for using natural gas power plants, etc. So here's the geyser. You can see it produces about 300 grams per second when it's erupting. This could vary a lot. The gas will always come out at 150 degrees C, which is quite hot. It's hot enough to overheat normal overheat temperature materials, so you want to be a little bit careful with this. And the average output overall, including its dormant period, is usually around 100 grams per second. So slightly more than what you'd handle with one power generator. So let's begin. Let me show you how I like to set up my rooms. So the exact layout is going to change depending on where your geyser is, but I like to split it into two separate little regions. So I'm going to put the geyser on one half. You can mirror everything I'm going to do here. And we're going to make a 4-tile high room, because that's how the buildings fit in. You're probably used to this by now if you watch my videos. And then we're going to put another 4 tiles here and another 4 tiles here. And these are going to be for 2 buildings I'm going to talk about in a minute. So we'll cover this up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it up here. And we're going to make a standard liquid lock where we just pour in some liquids, some kind of liquid that's not going to boil. We are going to actively cool this room so that we can have stuff in here and not overheat at over 125 degrees C. We're going to set this up so you can build everything with the gold amalgam that you can find in the swampy biome. So this is what our bottom room is going to look like, and then we're going to put another liquid lock up top here. And then this is going to be the top part of the setup where we have the high pressure gas. I'm just going to draw out the tiles first, just so you can see roughly what it looks like and roughly how much space it's going to take up. And we're going to do this all with insulated tiles, because obviously the gas is quite hot. We don't want that heat leaking out into the rest of our base. I would suggest that if you're bringing dupes in here, you bring them in an atmo suit, A, because the whole area is going to be full of natural gas, which is going to irritate their eyes and they can't breathe, and B, the temperatures will be enough to scald them. So definitely make sure that your dupes have atmo suits on before they come in here. So to do the liquid locks, we'll just put some bottle emptiers here and here. We'll do that on both of these bits, and you can connect this up to your base with ladders. Obviously this is going to vary depending on where your geyser is. But I like to set this up just around the geyser in general. If it doesn't quite match up with where your base is, that's not really a problem. But this just shows you where the ladders would line up. And then just put some doors here so we can restrict access to only certain dupes if we want. Got an extra tile here that I don't need. There's nothing else we desperately need to fit in this spot, so I just put some doors in there. And what you do is you pour some liquid in here that is not going to boil, and just a small quantity will do. I would recommend just using oil for this. We're going to use some oil. I mean, one of the buildings in this room is going to use oil. So I'm going to assume that you have access to just a little bit of oil for this. It doesn't have to be a lot. You can pour in like a kilogram total of oil in each of these. Like, we put 30 grams here and here. Like, what I'll do is I'll just fill all of these bits here. And then if we just release this, you'll see it forms a vacuum when the oil drips down. So this vacuum will prevent any of the hot gas in either of these rooms from exchanging heat with the rest of the liquid lock and the rest of the outside environment as a result. So having this vacuum tile here is quite nice. If you're not that fussed, you can just cover this in liquid and have that liquid absorb some of the heat. But I like to do it like this because it uses less material and it results in less heat transfer. So those are the liquid locks. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how we actually handle the gas. Because if we just sealed this up here, this would keep erupting until the whole room reached about 5 kilograms per tile of pressure, and then it would overpressurize and you wouldn't get any more natural gas. And you could pump that somewhere else into a series of gas reservoirs or high pressure storage, but that's going to take power and it's going to generally not be optimal. So what I like to do with this is I like to use a drip pump, and I'll explain the general principle now, and we'll see how I like to hook it up in this particular room in a minute. So what we do is we block off these 2 tiles here, so the gas fills up this little bit, and then again with just a tiny little bit of crude oil, we'll put about 30 grams here. You can do that with a bottle emptier. You can do that with the pedestal trick. In case you don't know what a pedestal trick is, because I don't often explain it, you can build a pedestal and then select a liquid on here, and the dupes will deliver 1 kilogram exactly of that liquid to the pedestal. Then you can just unselect it to drop it on the floor, and then you can just empty the liquid bottle on the floor. And with 1 kilogram, the rest of it will spill out down here, but that's fine. You can sweep it all up. You don't even have to sweep it up. It doesn't stop the room from functioning. But that's how you do it with a pedestal. So we're going to put a little bit of crude oil here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have a liquid vent. So this liquid vent is going to go here, and we are going to use a liquid valve to drop a very small amount of liquid constantly into this crude oil. And it's important that the liquid that you drip onto the oil is lighter or will rise to the top of whatever the liquid is. And again, that's why I recommend crude oil for this, because it sinks right to the bottom of everything. So we'll get a little liquid valve. I would generally make everything in this room out of gold amalgam if you have it, because it's going to get up to around 120 degrees. So we'll rotate that valve and we'll hook that up here just with some pipe. And then you'll need to get a duplicant to set this to 0.1 grams per second. You can set it higher, but you want to use as little liquid as possible. Because what will happen, and you'll see this later, is we'll drip a tiny amount of liquid onto here, and what that will actually do is that will delete the liquid, and it will actually move whatever gas is in this tile here to the right of the oil, to this tile where the vent is. So that's effectively going to siphon all of the gas out of this room and move it up here where it's going to pressurize up to the liquid vent overpressure of 1,000 kilograms per tile, which isn't quite infinite, but it's a lot. So it lets you pressurize this room a lot more than you normally would, and we want this room to be high pressure. So that's just generally explaining how this is going to work. Now I'm going to talk about all the stuff that we put in this room that we want in the low pressure natural gas room. And these are buildings that are going to generate natural gas. There's 2 that immediately come to my mind. There's the Fertiliser Synthesiser, which uses polluted water, dirt, and phosphorite to produce fertilizer. Very useful for A, solid rocket fuel, and B, just running your farms and getting more output from your farms. It's a building you like to run in general if you don't have a lot of fertilizer on the map, but it can be annoying because it also produces a little bit of natural gas. It produces 10 grams of natural gas per second when in use at 76 degrees C. So I like to shove it in this room so that all that natural gas just gets mixed in with the geyser output and gets pumped into the storage over here. So you can get your dupes to just deliver all the ingredients to this, but there is room to fit in some conveyor receptacles and some mechatronics stuff if you have a mechatronics duplicant. These conveyor receptacles won't overheat, so you can build these out of anything. We're just going to put 2 of these in here. One of those is going to be for dirt, and one of those is going to be for phosphorite. So let me just put a auto sweeper in here. This auto sweeper, we'll make this out of... Yeah, we can make this out of copper. We can make it out of gold. Anything with an overheat temperature of plus 50 degrees will do for this setup, because we're going to cool it a little bit. And we'll just put this auto sweeper next to the vent here, so we can cover the fertilizer machine. It only really needs to cover the tile where the automation port is, which is this tile, because that's a tile that stuff actually gets loaded into. But we'll also put a conveyor loader over here. This also has to be made out of copper or gold or steel or whatever. We'll just make it out of copper. So what we'll do is we'll just set up a couple of dev pump solids over here. And I'm just going to set these to dirt and phosphorite. And those are going to pump those respective materials into these. And then we'll get all the materials into the fertilizer machine. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pump polluted water through this, and we're going to use it not only for the drip pump, but also to run the machine, and I'll explain more about that later. So, we've got all of the mechatronics stuff in here. I will also put a little vent over here. This can be a regular gas vent, doesn't need to be a high pressure gas vent because this room will be low pressure. So if we have natural gas from other sources, we can put it in here. If we have other natural gas vents across the map, like there's one over here, we could just set up a pump on this and dump it all in this room with the other vent output. This drip pump can handle a very large amount of gas incoming in before this will stop overpressurizing, because the rate at which the gas moves from this tile to this tile increases with the amount of gas on this tile. So you can get quite a lot of natural gas moving into this room without any issues. So we'll just put a regular gas vent here. And then the last building that I'll put in here is an oil refinery. So this converts 10 kilograms per second of crude oil into 5 kilograms per second of petroleum, but it does generate 90 grams per second of natural gas while it's running. And yes, I know if you're trying to turn crude oil into petroleum, you can boil it directly at high temperatures to get 100% of the mass turned into petroleum. But you might not necessarily want to do that early game. And in terms of power output, 5 kilograms per second of petroleum and 90 grams per second of natural gas is fairly similar to the power you get out of 10 kilograms of petroleum. Or at least it's manageable. It's something that you can deal with. It's not going to hurt you in the early game. So it can be helpful to set this up in the early game as soon as you're setting up your natural gas thing, just so you can get some petroleum to start. You can make some emergency plastic if you need to. You can make some petroleum for liquid locks, etc. And then eventually, once you build a proper petroleum boiler, you can stop using this. But this natural gas room setup lets you use this oil refinery without a huge amount of headaches in the early game, because all the gas is just going to get sorted out with all the rest of this. And that goes there, and you don't need to light any of this up, but even though the duplicate needs to operate the oil refinery for it to work, it will still operate at the fixed output, 5 kilograms per second of petroleum. This is independent of the dupe's skill. So we can just put that there. And yeah, that's basically everything I have in this sort of low pressure room. You can just set this to all, because this is just going to dump out fertilizer, and that's going to be the only solid product in this room. And we'll just put like a conveyor rail in here, and we'll just dump the fertilizer out here. That's not going to cause any issues. So now that we're getting all the natural gas in this room, and we're sending it up here into this high pressure room, what are we going to do with this room? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the actual natural gas generators in here. That will generate power from this geyser and run the whole setup and run everything in here. And probably a few more things. So first of all, I'm going to put some mesh tiles in here, and we're going to go all the way over here. And then I'm actually going to remove this insulated tile here. So let's just remove that. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the natural gas generator over here. Again, make this out of gold amalgam, because this room is going to get to those sorts of temperatures above 75°C where you'll want this. I'm going to put one here and another here. And a single geyser won't produce enough natural gas to run to exceed the use of 2 gas generators at once. And with all the stuff combined in here, this is enough to handle all of that pretty consistently. And if you're pumping in natural gas from other vents and other sources from across the map, you can make more floors just like this with more liquid locks where you have extra gas generators. So you can just more or less copy this floor up here for however many natural gas vents you're hooking up. But because we're just going to do the one, I'll just show you what it looks like with just the one. So natural gas generators are here. We'll put a smart battery in. Again, you want to make this out of copper or gold or something with 50 degrees extra overheat temperature. and we'll want to automate these natural gas generators. So you can use any material for this, really. Lead will be fine. This room is not going to overheat enough for that to cause any issues. I would set the thresholds on your smart battery to just above and below the threshold, so 10 and 90. And that way, once this reaches the threshold, it's going to overgenerate for a little bit, but it's not going to waste the power by going over 100%. And likewise, the whole system is never going to run flat because it's not going to reach 0%. There'll always be a little bit of battery left to start things up again. So I'd hook it up like that, and then these natural gas generators, they take in 90 grams per second of natural gas each, and 3/4 of that is turned into polluted water that just drips out of the machine on this tile here. And then 1/4 of that is turned into carbon dioxide that is pumped out with pipe from this screen output here. So I'm putting mesh tiles here because all this polluted water is going to drip on the floor. And the key to this sort of design is we're going to make sure this room is pressurized up to around 2 kilograms per tile, maybe a little bit more, before we start running these. And that way, when the polluted water comes out of these, it's not going to off gas because the gas pressure in this room will be high enough to prevent it from off gassing. So that's a nice little feature as well, is that it keeps your polluted water output from these well contained until you want to pump it away somewhere. So we're going to put a liquid pump in here to pump that up, and again make that out of gold amalgam. We'll put a hydro sensor in here so that is only going to pump when there's a good amount of liquid on the floor. I like to set this to above 50 kilograms in general. And that way it's not going to be pumping any empty loads where it's just like a few grams, because pumps just use so much power. And then similarly, we're going to put the gas pump over here. And again, you can just make this out of gold amalgam. That can go over here. And then we can just hook that up with a gas pipe just straight down here. And that's all you need to do. You don't need to insulate it or anything because this room will all be at the same temperature. And we'll put a Atmos sensor on this as well. And we'll set this to above, let's say 2,500 grams. So it's not going to pump unless the pressure is comfortably higher than the amount at which this polluted water would start off-gassing. You can set this to 3,000 if you want. That's what I usually do. And that's more or less all of the equipment. So in terms of power, we can just hook this all up with the same wire. I would use conductive wire for this. You're going to be producing more than 1 kilowatt of power. You can run more stuff off of this. Early game, you can connect this all up with a regular wire. But bear in mind, if you draw more than a kilowatt and you generate more than a kilowatt in here, you are going to start overloading your wire. So just think about that. Yeah, we just hook this all up like this. I'll put a dev generator here just to get it started. And then once that gets started, I'll disconnect it and you'll see that it all runs on its own. So yeah, there's the power. And then there's a few more things that you'll want to do. So obviously the natural gas generators are going to produce the carbon dioxide. What I tend to do with this is I'll pipe it up and I'll stick it in a canister filler, first of all. So this will fill up to 25 kilograms of storage capacity with the gas we were choosing. And the reason I do this is because you're often going to want to deliver carbon dioxide to soda fountains in your base, because these have to be delivered by canister. And they're recreation buildings that give you your duplicants +4 morale and +1 science. So it's pretty useful. They use a lot of power, but it's a pretty good way of using CO2 to get morale from your dupes. And these gas generators produce the carbon dioxide piped output anyways, so you might as well hook it up to a canister filler. But once we actually do that, this can overfill, and then this will stop running if the carbon dioxide can't escape from these pipes. So you just want to put a little vent on here as well, like a high pressure vent or something. And you can send the carbon dioxide wherever you want. You can send it to space, you can send it to slicksters, which is why I'm not including the equipment in this room. This room is just for handling the natural gas and the other products. the reason I've got all the polluted water handling in here as well is A, because of the off-gassing reasons, and B, because that's the liquid that we're actually going to use in this strip block, in the strip pump, and in the fertilizer machine. So we'll take this pump and we'll literally send the output over here, and then this valve will drop 0.1 kilograms, or hold on, yeah, 0.1 grams per second of liquid in here, which is such a tiny amount that it's basically inconsequential, especially considering these are going to be constantly generating more polluted water while the natural gas generators are running. So once this inevitably fills up, you can then just continue the pipe over here. Again, this can just be insulated pipe. It's not really going to matter. We're going to cool this room down below 100 degrees in general. And to be honest, the polluted water being generated kind of helps with that. And I'll talk more about the exact thermal balance of this setup later, after I built everything. But we can just send this pipe down here, and we can just run it over here. And then that can go in here, and then this does not use that much polluted water. This uses 39 grams per second. If these are running constantly, they're going to be producing much 135 grams per second. So somewhere between 67.5 and 135 grams per second based on just the geyser output. So you're going to have some spare polluted water, and you can send that wherever you want. You can send that to pinch peppers or whatever. And yeah, then that's more or less it for the room. So one thing I would say is you're going to be pumping in oil from the oil biome or somewhere to fill this oil refinery. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how I like to actually set up my oil wells. What we'll do is we'll just hook up an oil well directly to this room, and we'll see how that runs. So here we have an oil reservoir in the oil biome, and this will produce crude oil when you pump water into it using an oil well. So you can find that in the utilities menu. You feed it 1 kilogram per second of water, and it will produce 3.333 kilograms per second of crude oil coming out. And this oil will be at least 90 degrees C. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to pump in hot water so that you're not generating extra heat at this stage. If you're getting water from steam turbines, that can be an effective source for this. But what you can also do is you can just sieve the output from the generators themselves, making sure it's below the boiling point of regular water, because polluted water doesn't boil until 120 C. But you can sieve the sub 100 degree output from this and pump it straight to an oil well, and that could be quite useful. Yeah, you find the oil well here. The overheat temperature of this building for some reason is 2000 degrees C, so you can definitely just build this out of lead. That's not going to cause any issues. And then what will happen is the oil will just drip out of this tap here, and you need to pump the water in with a pipe. But what will also happen is back pressure will build up in the oil well over time, and your duplicants will eventually have to come and release it. And that's natural gas that comes out at about 230 degrees C. It's not a lot of natural gas, but the extra heat of that can be enough to cause some issues. So I'll just show you how I like to set up my oil wells in general so that it handles all of the various issues and it's fairly concise and efficient. So again, we're going to insulate this off. Just using igneous rock is absolutely fine. You'll find no shortage of igneous rock in the oil biome. Again, we can just make this 4 high. So we'll just remove some of these tiles here. Yeah, clear out all of this stuff here. Again, you're going to want to vacuum this room out before you do any of this, because you're going to have primarily carbon dioxide in the oil biome, and you're going to want to pump out the natural gas and send it to your natural gas room where your vent is. So we'll just get rid of all of this stuff over here just because it's annoying. There you go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to extend this 3 tiles out from where the actual oil well is, and then we're just going to do our standard liquid lock that we did for the natural gas room. And this is going to make sure that none of the heat from the oil well will leak out into the surrounding environment. So again, you can put some doors in here if you want to restrict access. And again, you can just do this. You can just fill this with oil from the bottle emptiers. And that's not going to cause any issues. So we'll just put in, again, a very small amount of crude oil here. And that'll do. So obviously we're going to be sending in the water from somewhere. I'm just going to send it in with a dev pump just to show you how it works. So we'll just put that over here. Set this to regular water. I believe it starts off set to water. Yes, that's good. So that's going to go in there. I'll put a dev power generator in here as well, just to actually run the whole setup so you can see it operating. So that can just go there. And then what we'll do is, so we're going to get the crude oil on the bottom, and eventually when we release the back pressure, natural gas is going to go to the top. So we're going to put in a gas pump. So I can, again, you'll want to make this out of at least gold amalgam. Even though the natural gas comes out at 230 degrees, we're going to leave enough oil in here that the temperature in this room never gets above 100 degrees. That's the aim. Because the mass of the oil will be far more than the mass of whatever natural gas comes out. So we'll put a gas pump over here. And then what we'll do as well is we'll set up the liquid pump over here. Yeah, we'll put it there. And then this is going to pump up the oil, and then we're going to send that wherever we want to send it. So we'll do this with an insulated pipe here, because we don't want the heat from the oil to leak out into the environment. You can cool this down before you bring it to the vent room, but it should work without you having to do that. So then we're going to just set up some sensors to make sure that these are running, pumping efficiently. Gas pumps in particular use a huge amount of power for the amount of gas they actually move. They use 240 watts to move 500 grams per second max, and if there's less gas in the room, they'll move less than that. So you really don't want them to be pumping when there's not enough gas pressure for them to get a full load. So we're going to set this to above 1,000 grams before it activates. And then we're actually going to have 2 hydro sensors in here. So, and again, it doesn't really matter what you build these out of. You can build these out of lead if you want. And what we're going to do is the top one is going to go to the oil well. The bottom one is going to go to the pump, the liquid pump. So we're going to set this to above 50 kilograms again to make sure that this liquid pump is working efficiently. But what we're also going to do is we're going to make sure that this oil well doesn't generate so much oil that it overflows into the liquid lock and starts spilling out of the map. We're just going to set the oil well to stop running if there's, say, more than 500 kilograms of oil in the second layer here. That should be absolutely fine. So then, another interesting quirk of this room is when the duplicant actually comes in here to release the back pressure, that is a lit workspace task. They release the gas at a certain rate, but that rate will increase based on the duplicant's operating skill and based on the lit workspace bonus. So you will want to put a motion sensor in here to detect when the dupe is in here, and then you'll just want to hook up a ceiling light. And again, make sure to make this heat resistant. I would actually suggest making this out of steel, because the temperature of the gas up here can get a little bit hot on 125, and it's generally not going to be touching the oil like this gas pump more or less is. So maybe make that one out of steel. Yeah, we'll just hook all this stuff up to the wire. That's all fine, and then you'll just build some automation wire in here and get that running. And that's more or less everything in here. And then all we'll need to do is just actually take the natural gas out of here and just shove it in the oil room. So we'll hook all of that up, and I'll see you in a minute. Now we set up the room. We've let the vent off gas for a little bit, so that the whole room has filled up to about 3 kilograms per tile of pressure. We've got our duplicant Mimar to come in with their Atmos suit, and they've set this liquid valve to 100 milligrams per second of flow rate. And we've re-added the oil here just to reform the drip pump. We've also put a little bit of oil down here, like say about 100 kilograms per tile of mass, just to absorb some of the heat from this natural gas as it's erupting out of the vent. And we have a little external source of polluted water we've set up here. And what's happening is the polluted water is coming in here very slowly. And if we just unpause it, so this is what it looks like normally, then the polluted water will drip through here. As it does so, it will come out here, and the gas will be pushed up here. And then because the liquid mass is so low, it will immediately delete, and then this gas will disappear and replace the liquid. And I don't entirely understand why it works this way, but it does. And this is how the drip pump operates. And that is going to lower the pressure in this room and increase the pressure in this room. So eventually all the natural gas will move out of this room and go in here. And if you have enough pressure in here to stop off-gassing, when you do this with the polluted water, you could just refill this with the polluted water that comes out of these gas generators. And now that we have some natural gas in here, we can actually just get these to start pumping once the pressure is high enough. So let's set this to, say, 2,300 just to get it started. So as you can see, the water is pumping in from wherever our water source is. That is causing the oil to drip out onto the floor. And when the pressure is getting high enough from the oil on the floor, that's being pumped here in a few spurts with mostly full packets. And then that oil is going to be fed into this room here. So yeah, we'll just pump in the polluted water in a controlled manner, and we'll just have it back up in this pipe for now. That'll do. So that's going to allow this to run continuously, and that's going to continuously move the gas out of this room. You can see the pressure in here is now lowered substantially, and it's increased substantially in this room up here. So we can set this back to 3 kilograms per tile now, and that should be fine. So the oil is starting to come in here. That is going to exchange temperature with everything in here. Obviously, we've got some cold polluted water hanging out in here at the moment, but eventually we're just going to run this off of the output of the power generators itself. So we'll just let this oil continue to circulate through here. And then as that starts to get to the oil refinery, the duplicant will be able to come in here and operate the oil refinery. Also, we dug up some dirt and phosphorite over here, so let's actually set these... up to phosphorite and dirt respectively. Yeah, there we go. So now we're going to fill this room with the dirt and the phosphorite, and that's going to allow the fertilizer synthesizer... That's going to allow the fertilizer synthesizer to run as well. And that's going to produce a little bit of natural gas as well and consume some of this power. Now that Mimar is asleep and we're not going to get any oil refining done. But this loop is still going to fill, and it's going to keep recirculating with the oil. So it's going to keep exchanging heat throughout the whole area. There we go. So now Mimar's going to come in here and play with this for a little minute. We run out of air. So now that we've run out of power, these natural gas generators are starting to operate, and the polluted water is spilling down here. But because the pressure in here is high enough, the polluted water isn't going to off-gas. So we can just keep it pumped up here, and then we can pump it out wherever it needs to go once the pressure gets high enough. What I would actually suggest is making this an airflow tile so you don't end up with natural gas trapped in here doing it this way. So you can just do it like this. And then the natural gas will go up there, and the polluted water can just slide right in and hit this sensor. And that's absolutely fine. So yeah, there you go. So now you can refine your oil in here with your duplicant in the ammo suit. You can produce your fertilizer in here and have that be dumped out wherever you need it to go. And the gas pressure in this room will stay low no matter how many other natural gas sources you have hooked up to this. And for every natural gas vent that you have hooked up to this room with the vent, you're going to want to put another row of 2 natural gas generators up here. So you just build another layer on top of each of these layers, and that'll be absolutely fine. So you can see we've just been dumping that petroleum out down here very neatly. But yeah, this lets you fit all of your natural gas infrastructure into this one sort of neat space. And then if we have a look at the oil well, this is eventually going to need venting in terms of back pressure. So we'll just get another duplicant to come do this, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. There you go. So now Ari is in here, and they're going to vent the back pressure of this. So if we actually have a look, so it's filled up with the natural gas. This natural gas is at this sort of temperature. We've got a fair bit of oil in here for conducting the heat away. You can see this oil is heating up as this runs. And we are going to end up with a little bit of natural gas in this room, and that's going to exchange heat A with the oil and B with the water in the pipe. You want to have a fairly large amount of oil in here to minimize the chance that any of this pipe is going to burst. Again, you'd probably want to insulate this pipe, realistically, rather than have it be regular liquid pipe. But you can set this to a higher value. You can set this to, say, 700 kilograms. This oil well won't flood. And then you can just have a large amount of oil in here to exchange heat with everything to make sure that you don't get any steam in here. And then that should all work just fine. So the gas pressure is getting up to the point where this pump would start working. We'll just set that. We'll set that to 500. There you go. So now the natural gas is coming out. Ari is suffocating because he has no oxygen in his suit. Yep, that is a thing. That natural gas will end up going over to this room, filling that up. And again, you can just hook up all of your other natural gas vents to go into the one room. You don't have to have a full room like this on every natural gas vent, just the first one that you hook up. The one that's near your base, the one that's where your duplicates are actually going to come out and refine the oil, is what I would say. So yeah, just to discuss the thermal capacity or the thermal flux of the room in general, I'm just going to run through all of the output temperatures of all of these buildings. So with the fertilizer synthesizer, the fertilizer is going to come out at least 50 degrees C or hotter if the input materials are hotter. The polluted water might be hotter when it's coming out of these natural gas generators, but the dirt and the phosphorite probably going to be around that temperature if they're coming from jungle biomes or wherever. So it's probably going to come out at around 50 degrees C. Maybe a bit hotter with the polluted water. And then the natural gas is going to come out at around 76 degrees. So again, you're aiming to keep this room below 120 degrees C so the polluted water doesn't start evaporating and so that the gold amalgam materials that you built everything out of don't start overheating. And then the oil refinery, the petroleum comes out of this at 75 degrees C or hotter. The oil is probably going to be hotter than that. So just assume that the 10 kDTUs of heat from the building are what's heating up the oil rather than the refining process. And the natural gas, again, is going to come out at least 75 C or hotter. So the gas from the vent itself is going to be the hottest gas. And then when it comes to natural gas generators, the polluted water that comes out of these will be at least 40 C or hotter if the building is hotter. So when this starts running, this is depending on the temperature of the building as well. So if the room is full up of relatively cool natural gas because of the initial thermal mass of the building when it's been erupting, polluted water is going to start coming out at 40 degrees C, and that's going to help cool a lot of things. But it will heat up quickly as the building heats up to the temperature of the building. And then the carbon dioxide is going to come out at least 110 degrees C or hotter. So that is going to come out hot. But again, most of it is going to end up going in a canister filler. And the carbon dioxide is not very good at exchanging its temperature anyways. So it's not too much to worry about. But those are all the inputs and outputs of the setup, and that's generally how all of the heat is going to balance out. So again, I think you can cool this with just the crude oil coming in from your oil wells fairly well. If you're getting someone to regularly use this and circulate new oil in, that should definitely keep the temperature of this room below 120. But if you have another cooling loop set up, like a thermo aquatuner loop or a loop of cooler liquid from, say, a brine geyser or something, feel free to circulate that into the room instead to make sure the temperature is below what it needs to be, or the temperature is sufficiently low that everything doesn't start breaking. So you can do either of those two things. I'm just showing you what it looks like to recirculate the oil here. But yeah, that's the build. You can do this in a lot of different ways, to be honest, but this is just like how I like to organize all of the natural gas infrastructure. I typically make a room like this. It's going to look a little bit different based on where the vent is relative to the rest of the map, relative to the rest of my base, but that's the general principle I sort of try and follow. Just having a room where the pressure gets reduced by the drip pump, and then you end up with a high pressure room where the natural gas stays here and keeps the polluted water from off-gassing. So yeah, let me know how you like to handle your natural gas sources in this game. What sort of things you like to do with them. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more of this sort of content, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have lots of different build guides in here or / discussion videos where we talk about Oxygen Not Included. We have tier lists where we discuss various aspects of the game as well, and a lot of silly meme videos. There is also the Discord where we like to hang out and post like memes and jokes and other people's builds and things as well. So there's lots of people on there usually talking about Oxygen Not Included. And I do stream live on Twitch as well. I stream between 7:30 and 10:30 generally British time, Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays. We do stream Megaquarium on Wednesdays at the moment as well. We do occasionally do other games as well. And the best way to know for certain is to follow me on Twitch, and you'll get a notification when I play something and you'll know exactly what I'm doing. But yeah, hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Whisker sends thanks to the following Twitch subscribers and YouTube members: Deadeye XL, GC Fungus, Grey Area, Neo Deus Machina, The Max Not Binary, Uglavisk, and Wolfreg.